Well, Daniele Fisichella went back-to-back with 2+ money picks to see off the challenge of James Eastham last week. Now, the Italian football journalist and broadcaster aims for an unprecedented three-peat as he takes on professional soccer bettor Will White. Welcome to Betting Weekly Extra Time European Edition. You're with myself, Dan Roebuck, while senior handicapper Steve Wyss is also with me. Our challengers get 2 picks each. Whoever has the best record with their selection stays on for the next head-to-head battle. Steve, Daniele was excellent last week. James, not so much.
Yeah, well done to Daniele. I think there was 2 excellent picks there. And it was a resounding win because James was well beaten twice. And it was a tough week in France. A lot of the experts out there, not just on this show, didn't get results right. It happens sometimes. There was a lot of surprise results in Liga, if you look across the board. And James was unfortunate enough to get to be involved with that.
Plenty of picks to get through over the course of the show. We are going to go chronological with the challengers picks, but we do go back and forth in terms of the games over the course of the weekend. We'll get Steve's selections in as well. So stay with us here for plenty of selections over the course of the weekend across the European leagues. We're going to kick off with Daniele as the defending champion. And we're going to go with your midday Saturday game, Daniele. First of all, Juventus Torino. And I get the boys' thoughts on derbies as well after we get your selection here. This is the Turin derby, obviously. Juventus -130, Torino +390 here. The draw +255. It's a long time, Daniele, since Torino have won one of these when I was glancing back at their head-to-head record.
Well, as derby goes, this is probably one of the most one-sided in Europe. Juventus are unbeaten in the last 18 derbies in all competition, having won 14. They only lost one of the last 34 derbies. Is Barcelona Espanyol so one-sided? I don't think it is. And Juventus, on the other hand, yeah, I mean, the same old. After the horror show at Sassuolo, they reverted back to the very risk-averse version of themselves. 2 clean sheets against Lecce, 1 against Atalanta in Bergamo. They didn't even look like they were trying to win. Massimiliano Allegri was happy with the point. Atalanta should have got the 3 points in the end. But, you know, with Juventus, this is what you get. It is a team that doesn't really change from last season. The only signing they made is on the bench. They were without Milik and Vlahovic for the game in Bergamo. They might still be without them as well. Since Allegri has taken over into 2021, nobody has kept more clean sheet in Serie A than him, 37, plus 4 points compared to last season. And so they will say, well, job done, job accomplished. But these Juventus, as they are at the moment, they're nowhere near to challenge for the title.
A little bit off the pace when it comes to the Scudetto. What about the selection then here for the Turin derby? Because once again, you're looking for a same-game parlay here, which served you well last week. So talk us through your play.
Under 3.5 goals and Federico Chiesa from Juventus to have over 0.5 shots on target because, as I mentioned before, normally Juventus games against middle side tables, they're low scoring. And Federico Chiesa scored already 4 goals this season without Vlahovic. I think he's going to be the main man. And now a few issues on Torino. They will be without the 2 centre-backs, Buongiorno and his replacement, Sazonov. They haven't conceded much, Torino, so far this season. Only 7 goals. The attacking numbers are very, very inconsistent. They are 3rd from bottom for expected goals in Serie A. 3rd from bottom for shots taken. I mentioned the horrible stats they got in the derby, but my issues with Torino is they don't seem to have any epic in them. Well, they had it back in the 70s or in the 80s, but they're not like Sassuolo then, who can beat Milan and Inter and then obviously lose against Monza. Torino, against the top 6 sides, they just don't win it. Since 2021, they only won 2 games against top 6 sides. Milan at home last season, Lazio away, and a Coppa Italia game against Milan. They are solid. They are better than 2 years ago when they were fighting for relegation, but they don't seem having them to beating a top side. So I don't see them really winning here. That's why I go for under 3.5 goals. It could be a draw, but yes, my what brings the pick a little bit higher is Federico Chiesa to have 0.5 shots on target altogether plus 115.
And he's playing more, Daniele, as a striker, isn't he, these days? Is that fair?
Yes, he's closer to the goal. He's in the 3-5-2 of Allegri. He comes closer with Vlahovic and Milik, and he's finding his feet. Sometimes he's still a little bit erratic. He seems to play a game on his own against the entire opposition defense, but he's threatening and he's fully recovered from his injury. So you should be fairly confident he's going to pose a threat to a Torino backline that, as I said, is a little bit depleted.
Steve, what do you think?
Well, this is again generally getting involved in a Torino game. I never watched Torino, so they're one of those teams in Serie A I just don't get involved in very often.
You don't know what you're missing.
Well,
I mean, they didn't nil against Verona. It was fascinating. Well, I was watching the other game because Dan was commentating on it. Apart from that,
they're an under team, aren't they? I think there's quite a lot of under teams in Serie A this season. I think the average goals is on the lower side. This is a weird one, Daniele. You're going to be cheering Chiesa to shoot a goal, but not to score.
I'll score one.
That's very interesting.
Well, yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? He has been, getting a lot of shots on target, 5 out of 7 games this season, shooting more regularly as well, 16 shots overall. Torino have the third worst expected goals. They have a really poor head-to-head here. It reminds me a bit of when Saint Etienne faced Lyon. I don't think they beat them for over a decade, and this is actually when I would look at head-to-head. It's one of the rare times because in a derby match you can really get in the heads of the players. I mean, Juventus, is it just me? They look a big price to win this game. They're so dominant in this head-to-head. They're not far off even money last time I looked.
Can't trust them. You can't trust Juventus. That's all. For the last 2 years, can't trust it. They're a bit like a crab. One step forwards, two backwards, one sideways. You never go where they're going. It's difficult to trust. I mean, based on the starting 11, yes, they should win, but it's a lackluster.
I might watch this. I might watch this. Feels like the sort of game there might be some cards in as well.
Just on derby games, and I bring Will in here. Look, I mean, Steve's made the point that sometimes it is a thing for bettors. I'm not convinced. I look at the form, I look at some numbers, and I try to not get bogged down with any sort of narrative or broadcaster hype or fan hype about derby games. Is it a factor for you, Will?
Yeah, it's a factor. As to how much, I think it really depends on the derby. Normally, an adjust for me would be I'd decrease home advantage a little bit because the element of travel is not so prevalent. And then certain derbies, teams share the same stadium. So the home advantage in those scenarios is even more diminished. So I think there is also a theory that the supremacy, so the quote unquote the better team, you should also suppress the supremacy as well in derbies. But I'm not sure I buy into that so much. Kind of a more gritty kind of form out of the window kind of narrative.
So Daniel, you wouldn't shy away. Obviously, you haven't because you've played in this game. I mean, do you like betting in derby games even more?
I think that one of the best games in Serie A. But as I said, this one is a weird one because he's between two teams that they've never been at the same level, apart from in the 70s when Torino won the league and they were challenging with Juventus. So it is a very one-sided derby. I mean, the derby of Milan is a top of the table clash. The derby of Genova is the bottom of the table clash. Roma and Lazio are in the middle, and sometimes the derby for them is the most important game of the season. Well, it is obviously for Torino. For Juve, it's just another game.
Steve, what are your thoughts on derby games? Do you run a mile? You think I'm not getting involved in that? There's so many games to go at here. I don't need to get in something where there's that X factor that I can't quite quantify.
I like getting involved in them because I get sucked into these fixtures. I tend to watch them more. But I will say this: if you lose a bet in a derby game, I think you've only got yourself to blame because strange things can happen in these fixtures. So I don't think you can ever expect to be, guaranteed of winning in these sort of games. But this looks a good angle. This smells like a low-scoring Juventus win, and Chiesa has been, firing the shot, so it makes sense. Is this the plus 115?
Yeah.
Odds. Yeah. This looks a good plus money parlay. Really.
Well, look. Juve to win a minus 130, but as Daniele said, you can't really trust them. Under 2.5 goals is minus 157, so a value play. And Daniele gave us 2 plus money plays that won last week, plus 115. Let's get Will's first selection for the challenge. Will, who has gone for a same game parlay for both picks this week, and I'm going to ask him about that later on in the show, but we'll get the selection first of all. We go Germany, Will, for your first one in time order. It's 9:30 Eastern on Saturday. Leipzig against Bochum. Leipzig minus 435, Bochum plus 1050, so a big price on the slate. I actually think they've been a bit unlucky this season, just on expected goals metrics. But I know that you've not gone for that. Just give us your thoughts on Bochum before we get your pick, because I'm intrigued here. I just looked at some of their numbers, and when they were thumped by Bayern, I actually backed them on the Asian handicap and lost my money. But Will, just give us your thoughts on Bochum first. I'm intrigued.
To be honest, Dan, I don't think they're that great. I know they've had quite a tough schedule, but they are winless so far in the Bundesliga. They were crushed 5-0 away to Stuttgart. And then recently, the game you're talking about, 7-0 away to Bayern.
I took 2.5 on that game.
Sorry, what? You were on under 2.5?
No, I was on Asian handicap plus 2.5 for Bochum. Yeah, I lost my money very quickly. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to get done quickly, isn't it, rather than kind of in the last minute. But like we were on the Celtic game last night. But the underlying metrics aren't great, to be honest with you. At least the way I kind of view them. They had 14 shots on target against in that Bayern game, 9 in the Stuttgart game. They have had a tough schedule, but I think they're definitely one of the weakest teams in the Bundesliga. They've got second worst shots on target against as well, 7.33 shots on target against per 90. And that kind of forms the angle of my bet, actually, Dan. I have also branched out into the side markets to find value here. And I'm taking Leipzig to win the game, which is the kind of more obvious part of it. Parlayed with Xavi Simons over 0.5 shots on target. And that parlay comes in at minus 110. We've spoken quite a bit about Xavi Simons and this Leipzig team in the show before. He's averaging himself 1.14 shots on target per 90 minutes in this season's Bundesliga. That's 5th in the whole league. It's a continuation of his form from last season with PSV in their Eredivisie, where he averaged 1.19 shots on target per 90. And Leipzig overall are averaging 6 shots on target per 90, which is the 4th best in Bundesliga, despite having played quite a tough schedule. They played Leverkusen, Bayern Munich, Gladbach, Union Berlin, and Stuttgart, amongst one other. Can't remember who that one other game was against. So given that Bochum also have the second worst shots on target against in Bundesliga with 7.33 per 90, I think we're probably looking at least 6.5 plus would be the line I'd set on the shots on target for Leipzig. And I'd be on the overs there, to be frank. So we've got to expect Xavi Simons to have at least one shot on target. I can't really see why there's so much value on offer here. I think this potentially has been mispriced. In terms of the Leipzig to win the game element, they've only lost away to Leverkusen this season and drawn at home to Bayern, I believe. I think they won all other games. They've also had a tough schedule, and Bochum are definitely not at the level of Bayern or Bayer Leverkusen, one of the weakest teams in the league, as I've already said. So this parlay, to me, I think obviously the more risky element of it is the Xavi Simons over half a shot on target, but I see very little chance that he doesn't achieve that.
Steve, you've been against Bochum, haven't you, a few times this season? Does this make sense, this play to you?
Yes, it definitely does. Bochum are absolutely awful. I thought you were having a bit of a laugh when you put.
Listen. Steve, as you know, I use a bit of Y Scout data. I've just pulled it up here. Last game, 2.96 expected goals in a 3-1 defeat to Gladbach. Let's just gloss over the Bayern game against Eintracht Frankfurt when they drew 1-1, 2.52 xG as opposed to 1.14. And the previous game against Dortmund, very close, 1.35, 1.44. They're just the figures that I've been going on. And maybe I should delve a little
feel like
deeper.
You're cherry picking a bit there, Dan. Yellow card.
Go on, Steve.
I watched that game. I watched that last week against Gladbach, and in the first half, they were a disgrace, really. It could have been 5 or 6. I actually think they'll prefer playing away from home here. We get into a stage where a good result for them is just not getting obliterated. And Leipzig have just played Manchester City, which is never easy. Okay. So I actually think this might not be such a huge hammering as you think. The handicap is minus 1.75. The goal line's 3.75. I wouldn't actually get involved in this particular game. But this bet of Will's basically comes down to Xavi Simons having a shot on target because Leipzig will win. Something strange is going to happen if they don't win. He's actually not had a shot off target this season, which is remarkable. He's had 3 blocked, but 6 shots and 6 on target. So
sounds like you've had a shot.
Do you know what's interesting is the actual player, the buyback clause that PSG put in for him at PSV and now sent. Well, yeah, they sent him to PSV and then put a buyback of €6 million, bought him back, and now have put him out on loan again. And it makes business sense. I'm just surprised he didn't actually stay in PSG. Really, it looks like he could do a job for them there.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah, certainly missing someone, judging by what happened against Newcastle in the Champions League. Let's get Steve's hot dog, shall we? We go to Spain for this one. It's an early kickoff on Saturday, 8 a.m. Eastern. You've gone to Spain. Steve, tell us your lively play, your lively outsider this weekend.
Well, I'm going away from a team here this week. I'm actually going in the goals market, over 3.5 goals at plus 240, Dan. Cadiz against Girona. I've mentioned Girona before. They are a team very much involved in a lot of high-scoring games. They've actually they've got the 3rd best expected goals, so they're legitimately a strong attacking team. You watch them play, it's pretty end-to-end football. They're a little bit like Brighton in a way. They suck teams into shootouts, and I'm hoping that will be the case here. I could have just kept it simple and gone for over 2.5 goals. That's the main line for the game, which looks low. But I think this match either goes comfortably over or it's a random 0-1 or something, because Cadiz home games have been low scoring. But it's interesting. The one decent team they did face at home was a 3-1 win from them against Villarreal. So it did open up in that fixture. Cadiz, I don't actually think their defense is that good whenever I've seen them play. I think Girona can come here and they've had a good start to the season. They lost against Real Madrid last week, but we shouldn't hold that against them too much. It was on the back of 3 games in the space of a week. They should have scored at least 1 goal in that game. Just overall, a very good team to watch in La Liga right now. And I was surprised to get plus 240 on over 3.5. I think every Girona game, really, the goal line should be probably 2.75 or 3, if not more. And I'm just searching for a bit of extra value here. Those who want to play it a bit safer can just take the over 2.5. But plus 240 for over 3.5. This looked like a good sort of underdog, big price player of the week.
Just on the overs on the overs markets. I mean, it's minus 105 over 2.5, which is even money-ish. I'll ask Daniele and Will and Steve this. Would you be one to sort of split stakes and Daniele go over 2.5, over 3.5, over 4.5? You see some wild staking plans across social media sometimes. If you believe there's going to be goals, do you split your stakes and try and get the jackpot, Daniele?
Well, it could. I think it's always a good idea. I mean, if you look at 2 teams haven't played in Europe this midweek, so fairly rested, and yes, obviously Girona very interesting outlet as well. So yeah, it could be a good idea sometimes to wedge it a little bit if you want to still return a profit.
Because Will, sometimes we talk about leaving money on the table, and if you just go over 2.5 and then it's comfortably over 3.5, you feel like you've missed out a little bit. Is that something you look at? Do you ever split stakes with goal lines?
Yeah, I think for me, there's probably 2 contrasting kind of forces at play here. One would be, I think, this kind of looking at the long tail. There's more value in it in today's football. I think the extremities and with the kind of the high press that most teams seem to be adopting, I do think that games can quite easily go way over. And especially a game is kind of 1-1 in the last 10 minutes. We've discussed this before. Often managers are looking to push for the win because they feel like risking 1 point to win an extra 2 is beneficial. But I think on the other hand, you've got to look out for the kind of the over 3.5, over 4.5 markets, because often the books will put more juice and more margin into their odds. And so you've just got to be careful that the price you're getting is reflective of, something that's fair, basically. But ultimately, I would agree. Yeah,
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you can get blinded by the big odds, but they're not necessarily value, Steve. You think when you start to go those big over 4.5 and so on, you think, oh, this is big. But really, because the over under 2.5 goal market is usually so tight and so efficient, that's where generally the line and the value can be.
I do this sometimes. I will probably have a go on over 4.5 here as well myself, because sometimes you look at a match and you do believe it's not just going to go over, but way over. So you're not, because the odds are so big, you're not exactly having to stake an awful lot, are you? So I can see why it's very attractive for certain people. There's some games that if you're going to go over, it's going to be tough work to get the over. You know what I mean? And that's why you take the lower goal line. In this instance, if it does go over, I do fancy quite a wild game, to be honest. So, yeah, you can be looking at all sorts of different goal lines if it suits you.
Speaking of goal lines, we will get some more picks from Daniele and Will next on the challenge, because they both feature goals markets. Daniele, you're next up. Napoli, Fiorentina here. Napoli, the champions' favourites at -157. Fiorentina +390. Napoli off the back of that Real Madrid Champions League loss. What's the play here? What's your selection?
Selection is a Napoli to win, the champions, and over 1.5 goals, -117, which, by the way, paid last week when they played a Lecce. They don't do 1-0 wins, really, in Napoli, and I don't think they will do the many under Rudy Garcia either. They were applauded at the end of the Champions League match against Real Madrid. They lost 3-2, but there were plenty of positive, the courage, the resilience. They went toe-to-toe with Real Madrid. In the end, they lost. Napoli, tricky start of the campaign, but only got 3 points less in the table compared to last season. So if they win here, they back in the Scudetto challenge. But when it comes to Fiorentina, who, by the way, are playing tonight, that they were recording against Ferencváros in the Conference League, that means goal. There are only 3 teams in the top 5 European leagues that have scored more goals than Fiorentina in 2023, and they are the champions of Europe, Manchester City, and the mighty Real Madrid. And then comes Fiorentina. Best start of a Serie A campaign since 2015-2016. They scored 10 goals, Napoli, in the last 3 games, but also Fiorentina have become much more clinical. Now we need to crunch the number a little bit more, because I know probably will pick me on that. If you look at the expected goals of Fiorentina, -7.31 in Serie A. So they should have scored -7.31 goals. Why? Because some of the goals that they took, they are pieces of individual brilliance. They are shots from outside the box. There is an own goal in there. There are a couple of headers from Nico Gonzalez, who's nowhere near the tallest player in the Fiorentina side, but he's so good in the air. So I think that all increases the expected goals there. But they also become very clinical in front of goal compared to last season. Last season, they were taking a lot of shots, a lot of corners. Now they take, on average, 5 less shots per game in Serie A, but they've doubled their tally. So that's why I don't go for the both to score and over 2.5 goals, which would seem the most obvious one, because they might have a blip. But I do think they will be able to score against this Napoli side, who's still a little bit fragile in their back line. Napoli second for shots per game in Serie A. Fiorentina only 3 clean sheets in 10 games, same as Napoli. Fiorentina goalkeeper made 23 saves so far in Serie A, and 10 out of 14 games of these two teams combined in Serie A have been over 2.5 goals, and both to score. Napoli have sacked their social media manager, so yeah, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine from now on. Napoli win and over 1.5 goals, -117.
Just before we get Steve's thoughts on it, we may as well get Will's lean here, because this was nearly an official pick, Will, from you, but then you dropped it down to a lean. So just give us your thoughts on Napoli Fiorentina.
I think Daniele's done a good job of outlining the kind of contrasting side to this Fiorentina side this season. The metrics do show that they've actually regressed this season, and I think losing Amrabat is a big loss for them. Personally, I can see Zielinski pulling the strings in those half spaces and really dominating the game for Napoli. They've had 5 days of rest as well from the Real Madrid game, so I don't think they'll need to rotate. Fiorentina might, but they're more likely to rotate tonight, I'd say. I think somebody on the show has also mentioned the fact that the whole Osimhen saga looks to have galvanized Napoli, actually. Sometimes teams need this kind of siege mentality. They need some kind of controversial event to just flip the switch. And I think that may have happened with Napoli here. For me, they were very unlucky to lose against Real Madrid. They won the expected goals 1.98 to 1.48. It looks like Kvaratskhelia has finally found some form after going through a rough spat patch. everything for me just lines up for a Napoli win. I've taken them. Well, it's a lean for me officially, I guess, on the -3/4 of a goal handicap, -118. I think the price has come in a little bit since. Yeah, I don't see Fiorentina avoiding defeat personally, and I think that's part of your bet anyway, right, Daniele? The one element.
Yeah.
Of
I mean, Napoli win over 1.5 goals. Don't get sucked into the head-to-head here, because last year 0-0 in Florence, 1-0 in Napoli. Napoli had already won the Scudetto by then, and that was the 4th game of the season when they've been 0-0. Spalletti was still finding the formation. I found a stat about Fiorentina that is amazing. Italiano, the manager, has been in charge of them for 113 games. He has changed formation every single time. Talk about consistency there. But they are flamboyant, a bit naive, and definitely unpredictable because he rotates so much. A duel to look for, Kvaratskhelia against Kayode on the right-hand side. 18 years old, Kayode won the Euro 20 under 20 with Italy. Is a real test. They said he's a good prospect. I think he's good, but let's see what he does against Croatia.
A battle to watch and bets to watch as well. Steve, your brief thoughts on this one?
I think it's a tremendous pick, really. I think the boys have covered exactly what I was going to say. And for Daniele, if it isn't broke, why fix it? The same bet worked very well for him last week. Napoli aren't going to win many matches 1-0 this season, so you may as well take them to win an over 1.5. This Fiorentina side are definitely on my suspicious list. They've got this expected goals over achievement is ridiculous. They can't keep this up. Only teams that have got exceptional players of individual class can keep that sort of overachievement up. So, they will regress to the much to the norm, if you want to say that. They've also got a fairly poor expected goals against, by the way. I think Napoli win this well. They could take quite a big beating here, Fiorentina. The only time they faced anyone good was Inter. They lost that 4-0. And Napoli, Will's right. They played quite well against Real Madrid. So I think it was even though they lost, it was an encouraging performance. So I think they win with a fair bit to spare.
Speaking of Real Madrid, we get to Will's second pick here. They're short price favourites at -345 to beat Osasuna. This is Saturday, 10:15 a.m. Eastern. So we're going to know Will's picks fairly quickly on Saturday. We'll see how Will gets on, obviously. What do we like in this one here? Again, you've gone same game parlay, and you've gone across a number of markets to try and get us a plus money pick here. Will, talk us through this one.
I'm not sure if it's the first time that we've had a same game parlay with 3 legs on this show.
I think it might be the first. I think it's the first. And it surprises me with you, but just go with the bet.
Well, I've been tempted by these shots on target markets on Bet Rivers. I think there's some very attractive bets around, and now I've kind of become a little bit obsessed with them. And I found some more value in one here, I think, and it's our man Jude Bellingham. He's averaging 2.69 shots on target shots. Yeah, that's right. He's averaging 2.69 shots per 90 in La Liga this season and 1.79 shots on target per 90, which is 4th in La Liga. That's a conversion rate of 66.5% of his shots are on target, which is quite incredible, really. And I think it demonstrates what we've also talked about previously on this show is he's getting himself in those positions, in those good scoring chance positions where he's able to get a shot on target, often unopposed. And I really can't believe the price on offer here for him to have a shot on target against a defensively stout but quite mediocre Osasuna team. So my bet, the 3 legs of my bets are Real Madrid to win the game, parlayed with Jude Bellingham over 0.5 shots on target, and parlayed into under 5.5 goals in the game. And that comes in at plus money at plus 108, which I think is quite an astounding price, really. I think we probably don't really need to go over too much, famous last words, but we probably don't need to go over the Real Madrid win part too much. They should have more than enough to win this game, really. Despite the defensive injuries, they might even have to start Carvajal at centre-back, actually, because there's no Militao, Nacho suspended, and potentially Alba's out still. So onto Osasuna. They do have the joint best shots on target against per 90 in La Liga, actually, with 3.00 conceded per 90 minutes. And their XG against away from home is also quite impressive. However, they have been playing weak opposition. Alaves, Getafe, Valencia, Celta Vigo. So perhaps that's why the Bellingham odds are quite attractive here, because they are defensively stout and they have a reputation for being so. It's a big step up in opposition, though, going from those teams to playing away against Real Madrid. And a Real Madrid team that will be coming in well rested, having only played on Tuesday in the Champions League. It's the final game before international break. They're clearly going to want to win this game. They'll probably play their full-strength starting 11. Real themselves are averaging 7.5 shots on target per 90 in LaLiga, which is top, best in LaLiga. They also have the second highest average attacking XG per game, generating 2.18 XG expected goals per game. They should have more than enough to win the game. And interestingly, adding the under 5.5 goals boosts this price from minus 118 to plus 108, which is a much, much bigger increase in odds than I was expecting, especially given Osasuna, in their last 126 competitive games, they've all been under 5.5 goals. So my pick is Real Madrid to win the game, parlayed into Jude Bellingham over 0.5 shots on target, under 5.5 goals in the game, plus 108.
Brilliant. Or is it? I don't know. 3 elements to this, Steve. Which one's going to let Will down? No, of course, it's none of them are going to let him down. And it's interesting that Will's quantified that under 5.5, because I looked at that and thought, what is Will doing this for? But the percentage increase makes it worthwhile. Briefly on this one, Steve.
Well, he certainly wouldn't have risked under 5.5 goals in the Leipzig pick, would he? But yeah, I mean, this is Osasuna are one of them. I don't know much about them. I rarely watch Osasuna games, so I can't really comment on them. They have actually drawn on 2 of their last 3 visits to Real Madrid, and that's probably the one element that I would be more cautious about. Will Real Madrid win? I mean, they've just had an emotional victory away against Napoli. I think they'll be flat here. I said in the Champions League show, they don't really get my juices flowing this season, Real Madrid, and I think it'll be probably like 1-0, 2-0. Bellingham is quality, though, isn't he? I mean, only Atletico Madrid have shut him out in terms of shots on target. He's the reason why England may well end their trophy drought in the next decade, Dan. He's that good. He's going to win the Ballon d'Or multiple times. Exceptional player, and he may well drag them over the line again.
Save the England chat when we speak to Daniele about the European qualifiers in a week or so's time. We are fast running out of time, so Steve, you've got around about 3 or 4 minutes or so to talk us through both of your bets in the Bundesliga before we get some very quick leans from the boys. Steve, Bundesliga ban for your 2 official picks this week.
I'm loving the Bundesliga this season, Dan. It's the place to bet if you like goals. 14 of the 18 teams are currently averaging at least 3 goals per game. It's absolutely wild. So it makes sense to focus on these teams for me. I'm looking at Werder Bremen against Hoffenheim over 3.25 goals at plus 100, and Stuttgart against Wolfsburg over 3 goals, 3 Asian goals. I think it's minus 103. Start with Werder Bremen, Hoffenheim. This could end something crazy. 2 or 3 all sort of territory. In 4 out of Werder Bremen's games, a team has scored at least 4 goals this season alone. They're a bit of a funny side, actually. Anything's possible with Werder Bremen. Very difficult team to predict one way or the other, but usually the matches are quite wild. We mentioned Hoffenheim a lot on this show this season. They're actually, I can't have them as my hot dog anymore because they're the favourites in this game. They're more likely to win, but their defense is difficult to trust. You know, they're so wild and end to end. Plenty of goal scorers on the show here. Kramaric, who I honestly have always rated him when he's fit. He's always had some injury problems, but he's a great striker when he's fit. Andre Kramaric. Maximilian Bayer's had a good season for Hoffenheim as well. The goals have been spread around for Bremen. Marvin Duksch is someone to watch out for. All 3 could well get on the score sheet. So a 3.25 goal line. At very worst, there should be 3 goals. We'll take the over there. And then Stuttgart-Wolfsburg. Stuttgart are a team that a lot of people have been getting involved in this season. Most people have been backing Serhou Guirassy to score any time. 10 goals he's netted this term. I actually think Stuttgart are getting into overrated territory, though, Dan, to be honest. They're a really short price here. Wolfsburg are not that bad. But they've got another really good informed scorer, Jonas Wind, netted 7 of their 9 goals this season. So if you can shut him down, you've got a good chance. But I don't really think Stuttgart can. I think Stuttgart are a little bit overrated now. They're playing well, but they do give up chances. So this goal line's at 3, so we'll get a full push if there is exactly 3. Wolfsburg matches do have only an average of 2.5 goals per game. They can defend a little bit better than some Bundesliga sides. But anyone who's watched Stuttgart this season, it's just been wild. It's been crazy. They've got Guirassy is a monster at the moment. And again, it should be a pretty open game. I'm thinking something like 2-2. I actually think Wolfsburg get something here. They're not a bad underdog, to be honest with you, Dan.
So over 3 goals, -103 in the Stuttgart-Wolfsburg game.
Yeah.
And Werder Bremen, Hoffenheim, like over 3.25 goals at +100 even money. Let's rattle through some leans here. Daniele, you've got one in Italy for us.
Cagliari-Roma, the Ranieri derby, X2 su Roma not to lose and under 2.5 goals, -103 for me.
And Will, we've talked about you leaning the Napoli-Fiorentina game. You've got one in France for us, Montpellier-Clermont.
Montpellier to win and Accor Jerome Adams to have over 0.5 shots on target comes in at a hefty +138. Steve probably knows quite a bit about Adams. Montpellier are the team with the highest closing line value in the Big 5 European leagues. Means that lots of sharp bettors and weight of money comes in for them pretty much every week. Adams has 1.46 shots on target per 90, which is 11th in Ligue 1. So, and Clermont conceded the 4th most shots on target per 90 with 5.71. Can't really see anything than a Montpellier win. And I think Adams is likely to get at least a shot on target.
And 2 leans for you, Steve.
Yeah, apologies. I've not actually got an official Liga pick this week. I think it's a really tough card. But if I was to go with 2, I would go probably Montpellier handicap. But I think Rennes on a +0.25 against PSG. They were a disgrace at St. James's Park. And something's not right with that team. Mentally, I don't think some of the players are caring that much. And Rennes always raise their game for this match. Since I followed French football nearly 20 years now, they always give a good account of themselves against PSG. Actually beat them in this fixture the last 3 seasons, which is no mean feat. Did the double over them last year. You can get plus money on them on the handicap. The only doubt is that they are against Villarreal on Thursday night away from home, but I think they can get at least a point here. And then into La Liga, yes, it's Las Palmas again, and yes, it's another under suggestion. Under 2.75 goals this time away against Villarreal. I think Villarreal might be quite flat after that match that I mentioned, and Las Palmas are going to come and park the bus. This goal line is 2.75, which feels too high. Probably should be 2.25 in any of their fixtures, and I would definitely lean the under here.
Let's get a reminder of the challenge picks. Daniele, your 2 selections for the head-to-head challenges you look to win for the 3rd time on the spin are...
Turin's derby, Juve Torino, under 3.5 goals, and Federico Chiesa of Juventus to have over 0.5 shots on target, +115. And then Sunday night on Napoli-Fiorentina, Napoli win and over 1.5 goals. That's -117.
Will, same game parlays for you. Your 2 official picks.
In the Leipzig against Bochum game, Leipzig to win and Xavi Simons to have over 0.5 shots on target, -110. Real Madrid, Osasuna, Real Madrid to win. Jude Bellingham to have over 0.5 shots on target and under 5.5 goals at +108. And I believe, if I've done my maths correctly, that if all 4 picks win, tempting fate massively, I believe it's a draw. Is that right?
I've not looked.
Actually,
I've not done the maths.
This could be controversial here, but Daniele would win by 0.01 according to the spreadsheet. But that might change. This is where we convert in American odds to decimal odds. I just want to say one thing before we go. These bets will be void if any of these players don't start. It's Bet Rivers rules. Do check your book because books have loads of different rules on this. The pick will go ahead. Sometimes you can tick a box to void if they don't start. But I'm not doing any predicting anymore, Dan. I'm done with that. So I'm not kidding anyone. I don't know who's going to win. I will cut my losses, which are quite severe. 0-7.
Well, I was really surprised that Will, who gave us some selections and then decided to change them and go for these same game parlays. It's not a route that I will go down. And I know that Daniele's the same game parlays as well. But the triple, the treble in that realm. I mean, I mean, I hope it doesn't let you down, but I just think it might do. I'm going to go for Daniele to go for 3 on this spin. Sorry, Will. Sorry about that. Even though you made me money in midweek. Thanks for your call. What I mean, is it just because you're finding value, Will? Just very bit. Is it just like, look, these things are too good to miss? I can put these bets together because I just had you down as like a good, solid Asian handicap punter, goals line man.
I am slightly out of my comfort zone here, but I think what's happening on the Bet Rivers odds compilation side of things is I think their related contingency maths are perhaps off a little bit. So
Don't tell them.
Yeah, I'm reticent to, and I'm not going to give away all of my secrets, but yeah, I think their related contingency maths is off a little bit, and I think that's why we're finding so much value.
Brilliant. No, don't mind that at all. Steve, Daniele, Will, thanks for your company. Good luck to all. We'll keep everyone updated via our X feeds. A reminder of which, haven't done this for a bit. Daniele, what's your Twitter handle? Your X handle?
At the Fisi.
At the Fisi, Steve.
At Meatman Soccer.
Will.
I think it's at Will White Bets, but I've only been on Twitter for a few days.
You've still got more followers than me. I'm at Dan Roebuck, R-O-E-B.
I'm enjoying
you
that.
You don't even got a picture, a profile picture. That's the problem,
I know, I've got to do that. I found out how to do a GIF the other day and gave Steve a yellow card. We're going to get the red card from Nigel because we've gone over 40 minutes again. That is a wrap for Betting Weekly Extra Time European show. I'll be back alongside Steve in a fortnight's time, as will one of Daniele or Will, who will be taking on US handicapper RJ. Stay across all of the Bet Rivers content this weekend via @BecauseWeWin. From all of us for now, though, it is goodbye.